This is the CHGO Cubs Podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook. Download the app and use promo code CHGO when you sign up. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Sunday edition of the CHGO Cubs Podcast. My name is Corey. I am joined, as always, by Brendan. We are coming to you on Sunday, May 7th, and we appreciate you joining us after spending all afternoon to watch the Cubs lose on a ticky-tack balk call.
Yeah, great sport we have going on over here, Corey.
Very exciting. The Cubs do get back in the series win column, winning the first two from the Marlins. They do drop the finale on Sunday here, 5-4 in very extra innings, 14 innings, a lot of free baseball for everybody here today. We are live, Brendan and I, on the CHGO Sports YouTube. So if you are joining us live and in our YouTube chat, welcome. We appreciate you joining us and sticking with us on your Sunday afternoon. If you are listening on your podcast feed later, we thank you for joining us as well. And we invite you to check out the YouTube later, perhaps, to see Brendan's wonderful graphics and things that he has for you. Brendan and I will be talking all things Cubs baseball here today. The series with the Marlins. We'll be talking about Justin Steele, Hayden Wesneski, Adbert Alzolay getting a shot to close, Matt Mervis's debut weekend, Miguel Amaya and his wonderful weekend here at Wrigley Field, Seiya Suzuki struggling a little bit. Everything under the sun on the table here for the Cubs podcast here today. But Brendan, I think in general, you know, we finished this weekend back at 500. They win the series. They get back in that series W column after a tough road trip there in Miami and the series in Washington. That being said, though, you kept this game close on Sunday with Hayden Wesneski on the mound against the reigning NL Cy Young winner, Sandy Alcantara. Kept it close. Your bullpen did a lot of really good work. You got some clutch hitting there late in the game to tie it up. Really wanted that one.
I know.
One of those coming in, you look at the matchup, you say, you know what, I'm fine with the series win. Do what you can against Alcantara. As we sit here after watching all 14 innings, as Rhonda says in our YouTube chat here, they left so many guys on base.
Yep.
Really would have liked the sweep there.
Yeah, you know, the game started off on a relative high note with Hayden looking so good, right? And then Mervis coming up and having some clutch hits over the weekend. And of course, they lose that game in that fashion. So it leaves a sour taste in our mouths. But overall, I think given what you saw this weekend, ignoring that stupid balk loss and the 14-inning loss, overall, there's some encouraging signs with Hayden kind of rebounding, showing good command for the first time in basically all season, and having perhaps some more offensive stability in the form Matt Mervis coming up and looking pretty good at the dish. And also good defense too at first base, I thought.
Yeah, that was something I saw a lot of people talking about on social media. You know, there was a lot made of whether Mervis was a average defender, slightly below, et cetera, et cetera. He made some nice scoops over there, and really all weekend we saw from Matt Mervis. I think he looks pretty good over there. But Craig in our YouTube chat live here talking about Mervis's defense. He definitely looks like he can handle it. I think that's really the key, right? Whether he's great or however that rates out, I think that he looks like he can handle it over there. He's not going to be a liability over there, which is really what's important.
Yeah, I like the two-hand scoop. You know, that was pretty good awareness. But overall, yeah, I mean, for me, like, play Mervis every day. Like, you know, give him the shot. Defensively, he looks fine. I think he's even better defensively. Just visually looking at it, like he looks better than like Mancini at first base. Not saying much overall, but he looks like, you know, a formidable, fine option defensively.
Yeah, and again, it is frustrating. Again, like I think you win the series. You know you're facing Alcantara. Alcantara was very good today. But, you know, this is another one. Just so many opportunities with runners in scoring position. Yeah. You just need that one clutch hit, or you need to move the runner over in extra time in some of these extra inning games. Like this just, again, another winnable one that felt like it got away from the Cubs. But the series on the whole, right, the Cubs win 4-1 on Friday. Matt Mervis's debut. He brings in an insurance run. That was a great game. They win 4-2 on Saturday, and they lose 5-4 on Sunday. So, you know, part of it too, right, Brendan? Like, 4 runs every day. We know that this pitching staff, especially the starters, are probably going to be able to work with 4 runs if they can do that with regularity. But again, just so many opportunities with runners on base, runners in scoring position. At some point, they're going to need to capitalize on this, or you're going to see more games like we did on Sunday, where you're frustrated because it comes down to literally who makes the first mistake. And unfortunately, it was the littlest of twitches from Adbert Alzolay that brings in a free run, a runner that he did not allow. So that's pretty unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, going into today, they had the second best run differential in the National League, right? So they should be, based on their run differential, performing better than their actual record. I don't know how you feel about that. For me, it's like a mixed bag, because in one sense, they're outperforming some of our initial expectations, but in a different sense, it's like, okay, well, what if some things start to regress a little bit? Did we miss out on an opportunity when we were putting up runs? And did we miss out on an opportunity when the starting pitching has been so good, can this sustain itself over the long term? So in a dark way of thinking, it's like, oh, in the back of my mind, it's almost as if, did we miss out on this good performance in the first 5 weeks? But you can look at it a different way and assume that a lot of this stuff does continue and they'll be fine going forward.
Yeah. So let's, we have a YouTube comment here from Ronan, very happy with Mervis so far. Let's talk about Matt Mervis's debut weekend. I think that's what a lot of people want to hear about. I think he looked very good. And I think one thing that I give David Ross credit for to start this weekend is he faced a lot of tough lefties, man, a lot of tough lefties, a lot of guys with some really strong breaking balls, which, I think is that area where it's like, that's probably going to be the biggest adjustment for Matt, especially against left-handed pitchers. And I thought he looked really good all weekend, dealing with a lot of pressure and adrenaline and hype. His family's there. The weekend for Matt Mervis, he was 1 for 4 on Friday. He did have that late RBI on his first hit of the year, one of the hardest hit balls for the Chicago Cubs all season. On Saturday, Matt Mervis was also 1 for 4 with an RBI. He did strike out a few times in that game, however. And then on Sunday in the finale, 2 for 6 on the afternoon with a run driven in. At one point in the game, though, Brendan, Matt Mervis was 2 for 2 against Sandy Alcantara. And his first hit off Alcantara was 100 miles per hour off the bat, which, look, for a young guy coming up facing the NL Cy Young winner, Alcantara hasn't had the best start to his reigning season, but we know he's very good, right? And so for Mervis to come up, rip 100-mile-an-hour single off of him, he's scooping the ball at first base. He, Madrigal, I think, has looked pretty solid at third base, given the questions a lot of us had about that. But he did make one not so great throw. And, Mervis scooped it like a pro. Nico on that play late in the game here in extra innings where Nico was ranging to his right, kind of had to throw over his shoulder. Mervis, with the 2 hands, getting it up in there. He looks good. I just think overall he looks good. And we have yet to see the real strength of his game that you're hoping he brings to this lineup, which is the power.
Yeah, it's the power, but it's also the type of plate approach that he brings. One of the encouraging aspects of his game, especially in the context of our lineup, is he might complement this team against certain pitchers. And if you look at his just ability to make contact with his ability to hit for power, it's a rare combination that you see. In AAA, his contact rate was 83%. The major league average contact rate is around 76%. And then if you start tiering that contact rate by power hitters, typically the sluggers, they'll make contact around 72 to 74% of pitches. The super power hitters who have 30 plus home run potential, they're on 70%, which is where Patrick Wisdom's at. But Mervis is cut from a different type of skill set. That's why Rizzo was so good. Very different players. But that's why Rizzo was so good, because he didn't strike out, and he was one of those rare guys that he still had 30 plus home run seasons. So if you look at Mervis, and there is a great thread by one of our friends, Steven, where he showed a heat map of Matt Mervis's contact zone. which if you're following on the YouTube chat, you can see this right now. But on the left, you're looking at contact rate by Matt Mervis. On the right, you're looking at the major league average contact rate. And what you'll notice is that inside to Matt Mervis, which is towards the right part of the strike zone, he doesn't really whiff. And for major league average hitters, they tend to whiff more so on those inside pitches. So this means Matt Mervis in the minors had an innate ability to make contact against pitches that typically cause problems for major league hitters, and that's those inside pitches. That means Matt Mervis perhaps has a faster ability to turn on pitches. So what does this mean going forward? Well, his projection by Steamer and other projection systems have him around a 330-ish or so weighted on base average, which is like in the form of WRC plus maybe like 105 to 110, above league average, way better than the projections for Eric Hosmer, for example. If he's able to make this much contact while sustaining above average power, which he didn't just do in AAA, he had well above average power in AAA. If he's able just to be slightly above average in the power department, then he should be hitting those above average offensive numbers. So right now, Steamer has him at a 334 WOBA and a 111 WRC plus for the rest of the season. That is a massive boost to this Cubs lineup, especially when you compare it to the alternative, which would be Hosmer racking up 300 plus plate appearances for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I just thought it was a very impressive weekend. I think, again, like the hype, the pressure, the adrenaline, everything, and facing a really good pitcher here on Sunday. He looks ready for the moment, and I think especially what we saw from him defensively at first base. I loved the quotes, on his first day from Ross and Hoyer and everybody, just kind of giving him full confidence and really reiterating like he's getting this shot. He's going to be in there every day. He's going to be playing first base. Like the idea is for him to never leave that position from this point on. So I certainly liked that today. Our YouTube live chat here, not happy with the runners in scoring position situation. Brendan Trevor in our chat here pointing out 3 for 20 with runners in scoring position today. It's something they're going to have to get better at. There's really just no way around that. We saw it that whole road trip. They're going to have to start capitalizing in some of these situations. It was a very frustrating way to end this one in extra innings. Just several opportunities to get that extra run in, but
you would think over the course of the season that doesn't continue, though, right? Like with this type of performance you have on the top of the lineup, you don't expect them to go 3 for 20 with runners in scoring position on a consistent basis. Granted, though, if you have at-bats consistently from underperforming guys, like not to put so much baggage on Nick Madrigal, because he did have that game-winning hit, but over the long course of the season, someone like Nick Madrigal and his like 80 WRC plus, like you don't want to keep giving at-bats to those types of players, like the bulk of at-bats. He's still fine as is, but that's where I get a little concerned. It's like, all right, do you have the depth to withstand some of those late inning runners and scoring position opportunities? Yeah. And that's something they'll need to improve on, that lower back.
When I think, you saw kind of one of the tough things that happens when you're not loaded, let's call it, with the kind of back end of your bench and stuff like that. Like the decision to pinch run for Amaya, ends up with Tucker Barnhart needing to come in. So he's taking a few pretty critical at bats to end this game.
That Amaya pinch run?
To be honest with you, I'm not sure. I don't like it retroactively, obviously, right? Again, it's just one of those things where it's like, I get what Ross is doing there, but when the game gets going and still going here into the 14th inning, you have to live with that decision. And I think you much would have rather not had to use Tucker Barnhart in those spots, and Tucker Barnhart's a backup catcher. It is what it is, but that's one of the decisions. I do want to talk about Miguel Amaya, though. I'm really thrilled with I love that they let him catch all weekend. I'm really happy about that. And just getting the opportunity. We're not sure how long he's going to be up, right? Like Yan Gomes is resting, but looks to be fine. He'll be back. This is his pitching staff when he's back. I know they made a commitment to Tucker Barnhart, so I think he's going to continue to be here. We've seen them carry 3 catchers before. It's not something that they're completely opposed to, but not sure how they're going to make all that work. So at the very least, for the time being that Amaya is up, I'm very happy that he's in there getting the opportunity. And dude, the stuff with Miguel Amaya's parents in the crowd, their flags, they're hugging after he got his first hit that drove in a run. I love that, man. I'm a sucker for that stuff. They're so proud, so happy. And if you haven't seen Miguel Amaya singing "Go Cubs Go" before his interview with Taylor after the game on Saturday, genuinely one of the best pieces of content related to the Cubs we've gotten in years. This is the guy who's been in the organization for so long, battled through injuries, battled through being a top prospect and being knocked down those rankings and kind of written off with all the injuries that he had, getting his opportunity to come to Wrigley Field, standing there after a win where he drove in a run singing "Go Cubs Go" with his parents right off camera, just smiling and in tears, happy for him. Just a beautiful thing. It is one of those, like, how can you not be romantic about baseball kind of moments?
I mean, my God, when he's doing that, like, you can tell how present-minded he is. Like, it's taking it authentically, that moment. Like, that was clearly one of his, got to be the highlight of his baseball career so far, right? Think about where he's come from over the last 2-3 years. Tommy John surgery, broke his foot, the COVID-shortened season, going through all those adverse, unclear rehab processes with the Cubs rebuilding in the process as a young guy trying to make it. And you get to that point where he has a legitimate shot to prove his value. And we'll see what the Cubs do with carrying 3 catchers on their roster. They did that with Luis Torrens, so they might do it here, or they might opt to give Amaya everyday playing time in AA or AAA. But you can see the value of Amaya come August. If you need catching depth, because Yan Gomes is older, Tucker Barnhart is clearly not performing offensively, even to perhaps the front office's expectations, and they may need that bat, but they also may need to preserve that catching depth, which is fair, because if Yan Gomes goes down, do you want to rely heavily on Miguel Amaya as a rookie catcher who has perhaps promise, but nevertheless, you still want that catching depth? So it'll be interesting how the Cubs handle that situation.
I also think it's important, for Amaya to continue to catch regularly. And once Yan is back, that opportunity isn't really going to be there. Again, like, I think Amaya looks like he belongs. And I agree with Shane in our YouTube chat. Like, there's no better place to learn than in the big leagues, right? And catching Justin Steele like he did on Friday in the middle of a, right now, like, all-star level, Cy Young level campaign for Justin Steele, right? And doing it really well. But I think this is a guy who's battled back from injuries. This is a guy who has not had a ton of time where he's been back healthy and performing at this level. So continuing to catch every day, I don't think is the worst thing. I do think part of the issue, though, is going to become, like, Tucker Barnhart has been really bad for this team. And I know they gave him a 2-year deal. He's got a veteran sort of reputation. But right now he's got a 23 WRC plus. He's been a sub-replacement level player, negative WAR on the season. I don't think he looks great behind the dish, if I'm being honest with you. We do kind of still have that, like, disparity in some of the ERAs from, Barnhart to Gomes, which we saw last year with Yan Gomes and someone who I guess is no longer a catcher in the St. Louis Cardinals system. We can maybe talk about that. I know I saw the chat talking about that, but just something to consider. Like, you have a young guy who's really earned this spot and, seems to be bringing that sort of, like, life and light into the team and the clubhouse in Miguel Amaya. I don't expect them to do this because, like you mentioned, you do need that system catching depth. But Tucker Barnhart has been very bad, and it is something that they may have to look into eventually because he's been really bad.
He's been awful. It's a delicate balance, right? I don't anticipate the Cubs moving on from Barnhart, and it doesn't really have anything to do dominantly by that 2-year contract. I think it's just because they need that depth. They've been so cautious with their depth in the form of even first base and the Christopher Morel situation. At the catcher position is probably going to be amplified even more in terms of that depth preservation.
When and especially, like, Yan Gomes is 35 and right now resting to make sure that he didn't have a concussion or concussion symptoms. So not the best time to be cutting depth or, and maybe worrying about that at the catcher position. Let's get Jan healthy. Let's continue to let Miguel Amaya enjoy and relish this time here at the major leagues. And maybe that decision is something that we circle back to. So going to take our first ad break here. The chat's talking about Dansby. The chat is talking about Hayden Wesneski. So we're going to get into all of that, but I want to give a nod to our wonderful sponsors first.
All right, quick break here from our first sponsor, DraftKings. It's NBA playoff time. That means big hoops action with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Get in on the excitement of every game with the touch of a button. New customers can make a $5 pregame moneyline bet and score $150 in bonus bets if their team wins. Plus, everyone can score a no-sweat same-game parlay every day during the playoffs. Open the DraftKings Sportsbook app, opt in, and place the same-game parlay on any NBA game. If it does not hit, you'll get a bonus bet back up to $10. Right now, the Suns are playing the Nuggets in about 2 hours here. Suns are 1.5 point favorites. I'll be hitting that 1.5 point favorite Suns bets, partial to Arizona, but also our PHNX colleagues have been doing great work. So you can download the app now, sign up with code CHGO. New customers make a $5 pregame moneyline bet and score $150 in bonus bets if their team wins, only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code CHGO. Second break here from our sponsor, Game Time. Buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you with killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee. You can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped up for the fun that you'll have. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. You can buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps, and you're set. Tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you never have to dig through your email. Right now, if you want to get tickets, let's say some of those late NBA games, you want to use the DraftKings app to make bets at the same time, close out the DraftKings Sportsbook app, open up the Game Time app, and if you want to get tickets, that's the best way to get the best price guarantee. Again, Open up that Game Time app, create an account, use code CHGO for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, code CHGO for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
All right, Brendan. So one guy I want to talk about. I see the chat talking about just the Cubs clutch, the runners in scoring position stuff, et cetera, et cetera. Also, yes, we have over 70 people in the live stream here. Welcome. If you could hit that like button, the thumbs up, it helps not just Brendan and I, but the entire CHGO Cubs team and the CHGO team. We really appreciate that. I want to talk about Dansby though, just a little bit, right? Like 0 for 6 today on Sunday. And overall, his numbers have been pretty good. 271, 382, 357 with a 112 WRC plus. I'm curious, do you have any concern that the power isn't there for Dansby? We haven't seen a lot of slug from Dansby that obviously would, help those numbers a bit, even though he has still been good on the whole offensively.
So it's a weird start to the season for him. I would be concerned if you didn't see a drastic change in plate approach from Dansby, but you're seeing that drastic plate approach change. So he's making way more contact now. He's making the most contact of his career, 75%, than he has since he debuted when he made contact around 77%. That power that we saw over the years with the Braves came with a drop in contact rate and a willingness to accept those strikeouts. At his lowest contact rate, he was around 69 to 70% when he was hitting more home runs. So it's a weird thing to interpret because for me going into the year with Dansby, I was a little apprehensive about his entire plate approach because even with that 25 to 30 home run range that he had, it was still pretty moderate for the type of contact or the level of contact he made. Like if you look at the type of contact he was making and the degree of contact for those types of, home run rates, he was in a tier of some, less than desirable guys for that type of money, like Ryan Mountcastle, Jorge Martell. And that to me signaled difficulty to project going forward. So the fact that we're seeing him make more contact, even though the power is not there, to me, is encouraging, because this is something that you do recognize that he needs to improve upon, because as he starts to age, Corey, like that power is going to naturally go down, as it does for most hitters. So if he's not going to have the underlying contact to go with it, that offense can look pretty bad. But if he's able to make those adjustments, make more contact, get more base hits, take his pitches, walk as what he's doing, be, an above average offensive hitter, which he's doing, then that's encouraging to me. And then also, as the season goes along here, as he's trying out new stuff with his plate approach, he has the ability to hit for power. Like his max exit velocity is still well above league average. Just a matter of if he's willing to accept some of those whiffs, and that will be ultimately up to his decision as the season goes along. The power's still there. This is an intentional plate approach change that he's trying out. And sometimes changes don't end up being for the long lasting duration of the season. Stroman last year tried out a new 4-seam fastball as his dominant pitch type, ended up saying, you know what, I'm scrapping that. I'm going back to the sinker. And that's been his form of success that he's always had and that he's currently having right now. So I'm fine with Dansby doing this now. This is not a deterioration of a skill set. This is an intentional change to adapt. And I'm fine with him going through that process.
I think it's going to be interesting to see how the Cubs continue forward in terms of the lineup, right? Because obviously Cody Bellinger looks like the MVP version of himself. So he's cementing himself as the cleanup hitter, or at least somewhere in the, sweet spot of that order. Seiya Suzuki in the midst of a pretty decent slump right now. So what David Ross, obviously gave him the day off on Sunday, except for pinch running late in the game. It's going to be interesting to see how David Ross continues to do this, right? Obviously, he's starting Matt Mervis lower in the order. The hope is that as he gets more comfortable, he starts to slug. He kind of slots more in the maybe 4, 5, 6-ish area for this team, right? But I guess, do you see, even with, some of the changes that maybe Dansby's working on, obviously the great work we've seen from Nico Horner in the leadoff spot, Ian Happ. Cody and I talked about Ian Happ on Friday, just an incredible start to his season that I feel like is not getting as much credit as maybe it should be. He had a really nice RBI in the game today on Sunday in extras, but 300, 418, 475 with a 147 WRC plus for Ian Happ. So he's staying in the middle of that order. So long-winded way of saying, I think we maybe see some change at some point, just given what Mervis does. If Seiya breaks out of this slump at some point, and if Cody Bellinger continues to be hitting this way, maybe we see some shuffling as far as that order is concerned. But for now, I think the patience is good from Dansby. Yeah. You do want to see a little bit more of that slug, though. But as somebody pointed out in our YouTube chat here, the one thing that we're not concerned about with Dansby, and I'm not concerned at all with Dansby, just want to see more power. Yeah. His defense is unbelievable, it's Brendan. So I mean, they are so good up the middle. Dansby is so good. Nico is so good. And I am enjoying watching Cody Bellinger play baseball more than I honestly, I ever thought was possible. Like he's hitting. Obviously, he has a key hit in the game on Sunday to, key that Cubs comeback and force extras. But his defense in center field is beautiful. So good. And he doesn't do it in, he's not making a bunch of diving plays, and it's not the flashiest thing you'd ever see. He doesn't
need to. He gets to the ball so fast.
His reads on the ball, the way he gets in those alleys to cut off those doubles, he is just brilliant out there. And to go along with a 149 WRC plus for Cody Bellinger, and a 19% K rate. He's already got 7 home runs. He's hitting 300. Yeah. Brendan, I mean, this is unbelievable that this is the performance they've gotten out of Cody Bellinger.
And that's a dream. It's a dream. So that's the one reason I can cope with these losses, Corey. These recent 1-run, complete nonsense balk losses, because over the long term, if Nico is performing this well, if Dansby is doing exactly what he's doing, even with some of these power shortages, and Bellinger is performing at this level, over the long term, those wins will start piling up. Yeah. And Bellinger performing at this level, this is an MVP level, which it looks right now, a lot of the underlying numbers do look somewhat stable in terms of him being, past some whatever stuff he was dealing with the last few years. If that continues, then this team is going to be in playoff contention, and we will not remember days like this. It's just a matter of him sustaining these adjustments over the duration of the season. And at least so far in the early going, in over 100 plate appearances now, like it looks as if this could happen. Yeah. Will it happen? I don't know, but it's trending in that direction.
And he's already got 9 stolen bases as well. Yeah, Cody Bellinger does. Like he's just doing it all for this team. It's really great. I see some, conversation in our YouTube chat here, and I've seen it on social media as well. Do you have any thought in your head about maybe talking to Cody Bellinger about sticking around a little longer?
It's still May,
Sure. I'm just asking.
May. If he's doing this in like August, and I want to keep Cody Bellinger, right? But like it is May, you still have to see how things work out. And from Bellinger's camp, maybe he would talk an extension, but he's performing.
If he's playing like this, he's
gonna get his money, right?
Well, and as Vanilla Chill in our YouTube chat points out, obviously the Cubs have PCA coming. They have a lot of outfield prospects, so it is a little crowded. But hey, like you got a DH. I don't know. Like maybe you have a conversation. You don't have to give him a crazy deal, but maybe you talk to him now because just like you said, Brendan, it's only been a couple months, right? Yeah, talk to him now, see if you can. I don't know. Just curious. He just looks unbelievable. That's why I bring it up. And I know people have kind of been talking about it. But yes, as Barbara says, PCA is coming, and he's likely holding it down until PCA is ready. And Brendan Davis has been playing better as of late in AAA. So, you hope he gets in the mix too. I don't know. You can never have too many good players. Alexander Canario is taking BP, so he is working his way back from that massive double injury that he suffered over the offseason. So that is good to see as well. But listen, I'm just saying Bellinger's been a joy to watch. So maybe there's a conversation to be had here. I do want to talk about Sunday's starting pitcher, and that was Hayden Wesneski. This was his best start of the year, Brendan. 6 innings, 5 hits, 1 run, no walks, and 6 strikeouts. He just gives up that home run to Yuli Gurriel that just barely got in the basket. So a really nice start from Hayden Wesneski. I want to know what you saw from Hayden on Sunday. Again, this is his best start of the year. And then I think we have to have a little bit of a discussion of what happens to this rotation. Kyle Hendricks is coming back, right? He was in the dugout. You saw him smiling in the dugout today. He's been working on things. They're going to bring him back. And I think it warrants a discussion of what does that look like for everybody else? And it becomes a much more interesting discussion after Hayden has kind of gotten on a little bit of a roll here, getting more comfortable, getting better results. It's an interesting conversation. So what did you see from Hayden on Sunday? What has he started to do better since the beginning of the year that has led to better results here? And then we can talk about Kyle Hendricks.
Yeah. So this was Hayden's best start, undoubtedly, of the year. And it's nothing to do even with like the results per se of preventing runs. Like even the runs he gave up, he got hit on an inside 2-seamer in on the hands that was a home run in the basket. So, he executed his pitch. He should have had a shutout. If you look at what he did well in that Sunday start, it was fastball command. His fastball command was its best of the entire season and reminiscent of what you saw even last season. So if you look at his zone profile of where he located his 2-seamer and his 4-seam, it was right on the edges. He used his 4-seam up in the zone effectively, and he used that sinker towards the hips of right-handed batters, and he used that 4-seam against lefties as well. And so with him, that fastball doesn't have the underlying stuff to get you excited. Like he has stuff from his fastball perspective that suggests it needs improvement. And one of the opening concerns of the season was that his 4-seam was a little bit more leaky. It actually had more tailing action, even though it was being thrown faster. And typically when that happens, it's going to have a little bit less like vertical breaks and have less carry on it. It's going to be more susceptible to being hit towards the middle of the plate. So in this start, for him to be able to hit those edges with that fastball. I think we have a graph here, Stephen, if you can find it. For him to be able to hit the edges that consistently, there we go. What you're looking at here, if you're on the YouTube channel, those orange pitches, look at how many of those are touching the black of the strike zone. Like the overwhelming majority of those sinkers are thrown inside on the black towards their hips. And the majority of four-seamers are still in that window on the black and up in the zone, and especially more so the left-handed batters up in the zone. He saw some strikeouts as a result. So with Hayden, the sweeper slider that he has is among the best in the league. That has not changed this season. The command has been bad on that sweeping slider. But for him to be successful as a starting pitcher, he will not be a top-level starter unless his fastball is thrown with that type of command. He has to dial in on that command as he did last year. If he doesn't dial in on that command, then him as a starting pitcher this season may be a little bit questionable until he really fine-tunes that. But this start is the first start towards that process where he is fine-tuning that. And then you can maximize your best stuff, your top-tier slider that pitchers wish they had, and then maybe grow upon that with the changeup that he also has, that he says when he uses it, he's dominant. So this is a big step forward for Wesneski, and perhaps coincidentally enough, right at a time when Hendricks is perhaps returning.
All right, so let's talk about. I've been obviously very encouraged with Hayden Wesneski, and I think he is someone that obviously has the potential and a spot on this pitching staff going forward here. But the conversation is more in the immediate, right? What happens when Kyle Hendricks comes back? All the indications that we have gotten is that Kyle is going to get this shot, and he's going to be in there, right? And, David Ross talking about the depth, and it's never bad to have depth. And sometimes that'll be at the MLB level, maybe sometimes it's at the AAA level, right? But Kyle's going to get a shot. So I'm curious, what do you think the Cubs will do? What do you think they should do? How does it affect someone like, we assume Hayden Wesneski is the spot that maybe is in jeopardy here. I wouldn't necessarily expect it to be anybody else. Coming up here, the Cubs do have an off day after each series they play until the end of the month here in May. Starting on the 23rd against the Mets, they play a few series in a row against the Mets, the Reds, and the Rays, going up until their off day on June 1st. So maybe during that stretch, you can have everybody involved. But how do you think they handle this? Do you think it's the right decision to, if they send Hayden Wesneski back down, to put Kyle Hendricks in? What do you think they do here?
You have to give Kyle a chance, right? You have to do it just from a media competition perspective. Like, this team needs starting pitching depth. So what that means for Wesneski likely is a return back to Iowa, right? You're not going to get rid of Smiley's spot. Steele is turning into your Cy Young guy. Stroman is looking great, right? Tyon is coming back. Wesneski's going back to AAA. That's just what it's going to have to be. And the question then turns to, how long of a leash do you want to give Kyle Hendricks, right? Let's say he comes back and he's still getting his mechanics straightened out. He's not quite where he wants to be personally. How long do you want to risk some of his starts so that he can get back to his level? And I think we could have that conversation come the end of June. Right now, it's a little bit premature, but for this Cubs team to make the playoffs, we always talked about it going into the season, but their starting pitching projections sucked. Like, everyone on their starting pitching staff had terrible projections, right? And one of the reasons, because their projections were so bad, was that they didn't have the track record of getting through August, getting through September, right? So that still is a possibility. They have not proven. If you look at like Justin Steele, he's been a Cy Young. There's every reason to believe he can do it. But nevertheless, that certainty is not quite there yet, right? So you want to give your team the best chance to have that depth in the rare instance or possibility that you need that come August and September. So, that's a discussion we can have in June and July. Right now, you give Kyle the chance. Hayden probably going back to Iowa to pitch every 5th day, still needs to work on stuff, right? And then you reevaluate in a few weeks. And we just lost Adrian Sampson to a knee injury, right? So that depth, while still pretty strong, because you have Ben Brown coming up, perhaps he's looking really good. Javier Staff, for all intents and purposes, has been what you imagine with the diverse pitch repertoire and the ability to be stretched out. You still have some depth, but you did lose Adrian Sampson. And that is a little bit of your depth chiseled away that you may not be comfortable with by not giving Kyle a legitimate chance.
Yeah, and I mean, we saw it last year with, Drew Smiley missing some time with various injuries. Stroman was out a few times with injuries. Already this year, we've seen Tyone hit the IL, so you do want to make sure that depth is there. It's important. And Vanilla Chill in our YouTube chat live here asking, let's say Hendricks isn't good. Does he get moved to the pen, or how short is that leash?
Yeah,
I would expect it to, I can't say how short, but I think
weird discussion.
It's a weird spot, right? Yeah. But he did struggle on and off the last time he was healthy, right, at the MLB level. He's at a certain point
but
in
we
his
don't
career.
We don't know that, though. We don't know if he was like dealing with those shoulder issues.
That's true, an injury, right? But I do think, given Kyle's reputation, his history, his pedigree, they're going to give him a shot if it's not going well, they'll address that. And I think if they see stuff in the underlying numbers or his mechanics or things like that, I think they'll make the appropriate call. But I do think he's going to get some runway. And, it's a tough spot for Hayden, right? Like, this is just the reality of the situation. He pitched really well on Sunday. I tweeted out, it was so important, the effort that Hayden Wesneski gave them on Sunday against a guy like Sandy Alcantara. Hayden Wesneski kept them in that game. He is who allowed that game to go to extras and give the Cubs a chance to come back late in that game and make that rally to force extras. That was all Hayden Wesneski, keeping them in this game and keeping the Marlins to just that one run that he really didn't even deserve to give up, right? A basket homer. So he did his job really amicably. And this is just one of the tough spots, the realities of the business, right? A veteran, someone who is really important to the history of the Chicago Cubs franchise, right? In Kyle Hendricks, for his work in 2016 when the Cubs won the World Series, right?
Won the World Series, yeah.
He's going to get a shot to see if he can get right and go back to kind of looking like somewhat of his former self, because if he can, that's obviously huge for this rotation. And I think that Hayden will handle whatever that looks like really well, right? He earned the job out of spring training. He deserved that. But I think he'll handle whatever this decision is really well, because and this is not just coach speak or team speak. He is going to be important to this team throughout the rest of this season and for years to come. So how a decision is made immediately in May, we'll see. But I think, eventually it will come.
Yep. All right. Break here from our sponsor, Shady Rays. Take on the sun with gear built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered for the warm weather ahead with premium polarized shades at an affordable price. Shady Rays is an independent sunglass company that offers a world-class product that's just as good as any expensive pair that we've worn. They have durable frames and extremely clear optics for outdoor adventures like going to Wrigley Field in the summer. That's not all. Shady Rays has the most insane protection program in all of eyewear. Every pair of sunglasses is backed by lost and broken replacements. If you lose or break your pair, even on day one, they told us they will send you a brand new pair, no questions asked. Wear your Shady Rays with confidence because they have your back long after you purchase. And together with their customers, Shady Rays is providing much needed support to nonprofit partners across the U.S. through Shady Rays Impact. From building play sets for pediatric cancer patients to providing young adults with MS the outdoor adventure of a lifetime, Shady Rays is making an impact in your community and others like it now and for years to come. If you don't love your Shady Rays, exchange for a new pair or return them for free within 30 days. There's no risk when you shop. Their team always has your back. And exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Go to shadyrays.com and use code CHGO for 50% off 2+ pairs of polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 250,000 people. Last break here from our sponsor, Foco. Get fitted out in the best sports gear around. hoodies, shoes, signs, bobbleheads, and everything in between. It's spring and baseball season. The summer's coming up. It's going to be hot in Chicago. You want to get an Aloha shirt. You want to look like our own Ryan Herrera. Go to fogo.com. They have those Aloha shirts. They also have straw hats, polos, bags, everything that you need for a game. We also have set decorations from Fogo. We have a Nico Horner bobblehead. Obviously partial. That's one of my favorite bobbleheads in the entire world. Go show them some love. Check out foco.com or click the link in the description below for all non-presale items. Use promo code CHGO for 10% off.
All right, Brendan. So just a couple more topics here. One thing I know you were clamoring for, and we saw it this weekend on Saturday, Adbert Alzolay picking up the save. He did pitch in the game on Sunday as well and did a really nice job in those extras. He pitches 3 innings. He does give up 2 runs, but they're unearned because he didn't allow the base runners. So you have been clamoring for Alzolay to get a shot to be the closer because he gets whiffs, right? What did you think of that outing on Saturday? Do you think that that's the direction they go moving forward here? And just anything you're thinking about Alzolay here?
Yeah, so Alzolay has that underlying capacity to miss bats, right? With that slider. That slider has the best swinging strike rate of any slider in the bullpen. So my thinking was, once the 8th or 9th inning comes along, I don't want blue pits. You look at Brad Bosberger, he has an ability to generate weak contact, but sometimes that weak contact finds the outfield and you lose the game. Then you look at Michael Fulmer, and there's the same type of thinking where he can generate weak contact because he throws, over half his pitches as gyro cutters that induces weak contact. But at the same time, you saw David Peralta, bloop some game-winning base hits out to right field, and he's working through a new sweeping slider that may not be where he wants it to be, especially in a closing context. So that leaves other options on the roster. It could be Keegan Thompson, although he may be best suited for a 2, 3, maybe at times 4 inning roll out of the bullpen. Likely not the ideal guy. So who does that leave? It leaves Adbert Alzolay. It leaves, if you want to get extreme, Jeremiah Estrada. You have Brandon Hughes against certain matchups, although he's been injured this year. Alzolay seems to be, at this moment in time, the most logical choice out of the bullpen. And you saw it even in that loss today, which he did not deserve. He gave up a run without allowing a walk, a base hit, or any defensive errors. This rule, we can get into it at a different time, but I hate this rule. But you saw him close out the game even before that 3+ inning outing in Sunday's loss. You saw why his stuff could be so good. And what's really impressive from Adbert that you can put in your mind and think this is a reason to believe he can close is that he developed 3 pitches in 2 years that are now his dominant pitch types. He developed a cutter that he's using against lefties. He developed a slider. He developed even a slower slider, and he can throw all 3 of those with confidence. And the reason he's having success against lefties this year is because of that cutter. That cutter was not in his arsenal when he's getting smoked against left-handed batters. It's now in his arsenal. He can throw it about 30, even half the time to left-handed batters if he wants to do it with confidence, and he's getting the outs. So among everyone on this team right now, I can't convince myself that Adbert's not the logical choice. I can convince myself that I'm hopeful that Jeremiah Estrada can get an opportunity, but I'm realistic in that you may not want to trust his, youth and his inexperience. I think Adbert right now is a clear, obvious choice.
Yeah, I love it. And, as our YouTube chat is pointing out, Michael Fulmer has been better in the, sort of less high leverage role. Since that sort of mess of a series at Wrigley against the Dodgers, he's got 5 straight outings where he has not given up a run. 4 of them have been against the Marlins, but 1 was against San Diego. He's only allowed 1 hit in those 5 outings and no runs. So good to see. Again, sometimes I question David Ross, sometimes I don't. This was one where they, maybe a game too late, right?
David Ross,
but he pulled him from the high leverage spots. He pulled him from immediately going to him as the closer, and Fulmer's responded really well. And if you can get him to settle down and continue to pitch like this, you have another very valuable reliever. So I do like that. I'm happy with that decision. One last thing. Before we get out of here, I do, again, like I do want to give credit to Nick Madrigal throughout this weekend. I thought he had a nice weekend. He came up with that big hit on Saturday, and that's where you want him to hit, right? Like you needed contact. You needed somebody to put the ball in play. We've seen this team fail in those spots. He made some nice plays at third. I have said all offseason, right? Like when he does things well, I will give credit where credit is due, right? His overall season offensively certainly isn't where you want it to be, but he had a nice weekend. He contributed a lot this weekend, and I think that's worth the credit. There were also a few updates as well. One of them that I think is particularly exciting, which was Cody Hoyer is back out there, Brendan, and I think it might have been a hot gun in the minors this weekend, but the report was that he was touching 99. Not sure if that's accurate or not, but Cody Hoyer getting back out there, looking healthy, and our YouTube chat has been rolling here live. A lot of concern about some guys in the bullpen, and I think that's been a pretty frequent theme. If he can get back and be healthy, he can be a really big weapon for this team.
And he's throwing 100 miles per hour, right? And you have Cam Sanders also throwing 100. This bullpen may lack velocity, right? So you have one guy who has velocity, who has track record of major league experience. That could be a big boost. I forgot Cody Hoyer was this close to returning. I'm excited about it. There's so many options this bullpen can have, especially in the late innings.
Our guy, Ryan Herrera, also tweeting out this morning that Brandon Hughes is doing work. Yan Gomes is doing work. So several guys working their way to get back on the team and be contributing to this team. Last thing before we sign off, I do want to read this quote that just came across from our guy, Ryan Herrera, who was live at beautiful historic Wrigley Field for ALLCHGO.com today. You can follow him on Twitter at Ryan_A_Herrera. He said, Hayden Wesneski was very impressed with Miguel Amaya's work behind the plate. Quote, it actually blew my mind today. More from Ryan Herrera, from Hayden Wesneski. He said, quote, I was very surprised how prepared he is. It's incredible. I'll even say the first inning or two, it was like he's a young guy. You're not sure what you're going to get when you call a game. And so I kind of started second guessing him and myself. Then I come in the dugout. I'm like, you know what? I'm trusting you. Have called the right pitches so far, in my opinion, and I've been really hard-headed about it. And so about the third inning, I started trusting him, and you see where that got us. I'm telling you right now, that guy, he's very prepared. He's very mature. And I'm impressed with his game calling, because that's one thing that's really tough moving up through the ranks. It's not necessarily the framing and the blocking. He's playing the game. It actually blew my mind today. I tried to be overly prepared today, thinking that I didn't know how prepared he was going to be. And dude, he was more prepared than I was. I love that. I just love that. As we talked about earlier in the show, they're not going to move on from Barnhart immediately. Yan Gomes is working back from a concussion. How they handle that going forward in the immediate, we're not sure, right? But I'm thrilled that Amaya is getting this opportunity, and thrilled that people are noticing this, right? This is important. Miguel was a big prospect for the Cubs, and it faded away because of injuries and things like that. And for him to be back and healthy, this is a potential, pretty big contributor going forward for the Cubs in the years to come, especially when right now your main catching tandem is on the older side, 32 and 35 years old, in Barnhart and Yan Gomes, respectively. So thrilled that Amaya's got this opportunity. He had such a great weekend at Wrigley Field. His parents just so proud of him. It was very wholesome stuff. And then you hear that from Hayden Wesneski, like that goes a long way. And it pairs very well, Brendan, as we get ready to welcome the St. Louis Cardinals to town for the first time on Monday. Look, this is a Cubs podcast, right? It's a CHGO Cubs podcast. We talk about the Cubs. So we didn't spend too much time on the Cardinals deciding, at least for now, it seems that Wilson Contreras has not been good enough behind the plate, and he will not be catching, at least for a little bit of the future here. Jed Hoyer certainly sitting here right now going, see, I told you, right? And we heard about Yan Gomes getting so much praise last year from the pitchers. His ERA was lower with everybody. And you hear stuff like this about Amaya and his game calling, his presence, his preparedness. That is the exact opposite of what some of the quotes coming from like the St. Louis manager are suggesting. The timing is nice, right? Like, I don't really care to use our time to trash Wilson Contreras or, the Cardinals or whatever, because it's not a Cardinals podcast. But Jed Hoyer certainly looks quite vindicated at the moment for that decision. And Barbara's in our YouTube chat asking what happens on Monday. I don't know. I really don't. Wilson Contreras obviously helped the Chicago Cubs win a World Series in 2016. Yeah. He wanted to stay here, but then he talked an awful lot of smack in the offseason about the Cubs, the organization, the fans, everything. And that certainly was not well received. And at the end of the day, he's currently playing for the Cardinals. So
for $80 million.
I don't know. I don't know what the reception is going to be. I'm sure they'll have a video like they have with everybody else that returns and things like that. And we'll see. I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't really care. At the moment, the Cards are like 14 games under 500, and Wilson was moved off catcher within a month of a several-year contract. That whole situation is going as well for us, the Cubs, the fans, everybody, than we could possibly have asked for. So yeah. I don't care. I don't have the energy for it anymore. It's a mess over there, and that makes me happy. That's all I can say.
That's all I got to say too. It will be an interesting response every week. That will be might be a mixed bag of emotions for many people.
Yeah. So 3 with the Cardinals coming up. Cody, Luke, will have you for pre and post game on Monday. Ryan Herrera should be back at beautiful historic Wrigley Field, hopefully joining those post game shows later when he can. I believe a certain someone else is going to be in the studio this week, right?
I will be there Wednesday.
The pitch doctor, Brendan Miller, will be live for post-game in the CHGO Sports studio, hopefully after a Cubs sweep. All 3 of these games, Monday through Wednesday, are night games. We appreciate your support. Don't forget to use that code CHGO when you download the DraftKings app and sign up. Again, pre and post for the Cardinals coming up this week with Cody and Luke. They will be back with you on the CHGO Sports YouTube channel. Appreciate you guys joining us. Leave those thumbs up on YouTube. If you're listening on podcasts, we appreciate those 5-star reviews on Apple and Spotify. Brendan and I will be back with you next week. We will talk to you guys soon. Appreciate the support. And as always, go Cubs.